what you're admitting, Rachel, is that there may be a potential sacrifice in here. Obviously, the networks are going to lose money potentially. That means the league is going to lose money. That means individual owners are going to lose money. And as a result, they're going to ensure that the players lose money. Nevertheless, the players said, damn that, to hell with it, as LeBron James tweeted it with words, the F word, because I can't repeat that over the airwaves. The bottom line is taking that kind of position is basically acknowledging that you recognize the potential sacrifice that comes along with it. It's going to affect you potentially hugely monetarily, and you don't give a damn. Something needs to be done, and anything that it takes to bring attention to the plight of African-American men in this nation, you're going to stand up and fight no matter what. And if you've got to go down, you've got to go down swinging. And none of them are alone. And that's what's so important about this. And that's why I'm so proud and impressed with what they were doing. Again, if they were doing it individually, if they were doing it by themselves, even as one team, I would have had a huge, huge problem with it. But the fact that they've all come together collectively, I think speaks profoundly about what's transpired.
What do you think, Stephen, that the players should ask for? What do you think should happen? What should they demand before they get back on the court? Because it's not just games tonight. We are in the middle of the playoffs. There is an entire slate of games tomorrow. There's games scheduled for the next few days. What do you think the players should do now that they have pulled this lever?
Well, Rachel, first of all, I think that's one of the easiest questions you've ever asked me. It's very, very simple. Number one, the Milwaukee Bucks obviously want to bring attention to the Attorney General in Wisconsin because they want this particular officer prosecuted for shooting Jacob Blake. That's number one. But number two, and more importantly, let's understand something here. The players as individuals don't necessarily contribute to the political apparatus that exists in this country. They don't really contribute to politicians that we know of or political action groups that we know of. But owners do. The commissioner probably does. I know former Commissioner David Stern, God rest his soul, he definitely contributed to stuff like that. Leagues themselves contribute to these things. And as a result, they're participants in the political process. Therefore, they're in a position to get some of the things from politicians on the local, state, and federal levels that a lot of individuals, even individual marquee athletes, might not be able to pull off. So you collaborate with these individuals and you make sure, or these groups, and you make sure, not just as a player, but as a league, not just as a league, but as a bunch of billionaires with cachet that ultimately contribute to those political parties. Excuse me, this is what we need transpiring on Capitol Hill or in the State House or on the local level. That's how you do this. You got to crawl before you walk. This is the crawling process. And as long as the players recognize this is the crawling process, you would be moving in a profoundly forward direction, because that means you have no intention of stopping. You're going to march forward and move forward with significance and substance, and that will force everybody to stand up, pay attention, and act accordingly.
Absolutely. And Stephen A., you and I have covered this league long enough to see a real change in the way that sponsors treat players, their political and social views. I can certainly remember times in the past decades where if a player or a team went out and made this stance, their sponsors would abandon them. There would be such a huge backlash across the country against them. I think we have seen that change. We saw Nike do a commercial for Colin Kaepernick. What do you feel like the reaction is going to be among fans, sponsors, league officials, now that the players have actually gone and done this?
Much to the chagrin of a lot of people in corporate America, including this network and many others, I think it speaks to the political atmosphere that presently exists and will exist. There's an election coming up on November 3rd, and you'd have to be blind, deaf, and dumb to not recognize what a lot of these players are leaning towards. You have to recognize the fact that there's going to be another side that's going to be averse to the positions that they've taken. They're not going to try to just make the NBA feel the pinch, but they may also make sure their voices are heard come election night. It's incumbent upon the players to recognize this and act accordingly. I think, to answer your question directly, we're going to see a lot of people that once would have, really frowned upon these kind of actions stand up and support these athletes, because once the dust settles, they're going to want to do business with them. And those athletes are going to remember at a time like this, particularly considering the kind of issues that we're discussing, they're going to remember who stood with them, who supported them, and who didn't. And as a result, people are going to really toe a line in that regard, and they're not going to take profound and definitive positions the way that they did, unless it's for these guys because they're thinking ahead past election night, even past this situation that's going on right now. And they're going to make sure they don't alienate the very individuals and the very leagues themselves that they're looking to do business with. And when it comes to big business, baseball is big. The National Hockey League is big. We get all of that. But football and basketball, oh, trust me, that's large too. And football is on another level. They recognize what history is what history has taught us, and what the present times potentially will see, will record, and for history. And as a result, they will act accordingly. So you're going to see people frowning upon it, but in the end, people will be on the right side of history, whatever side that is.
Absolutely.
And I think we all know what side.
See, you mentioned other sports. The Detroit Lions did not practice yesterday, instead wanting to talk about this issue. The one thing I know, Stephen A., is this is only the beginning. These players have decided they're not playing today, but we will be watching to find out if they play tomorrow, what is going to get them back on the court, maybe, if at all, in the coming days. And remember also, the Republican National Convention is going on right now. So wrapping up, Stephen A., we've just got one more minute before we go over to PTI. But what do you expect in terms of how much this is going to mushroom in the next 24 hours? What are we looking at?
I think it's going to explode. You haven't seen anything like this in the modern era. It's one thing to raise a lot of noise. It's another thing to refuse to play the games. This is a different level. This is a different ball game right here. And we have to understand, again, I can't emphasize this enough. There's another side to consider. It's not just about them patronizing your product and your brand and making sure to put money in your pockets. You have a guy like LeBron James who's got his thing going, more than a vote. That's a very profound thing that he's doing. I can't applaud him enough. We also understand where he's leading. There are people that's going to use that, and it may galvanize them to lean against what he's encouraging.
Absolutely.
It's all a challenge. Folks are going to have to step up and make sure their voices are heard.
We're gonna see the floor here to Michael Wilbon and Tony Kornheiser. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you.
Days, whether it was Doc Rivers or Jaylen Brown or Pascal Siakam this morning, it's the first time I saw not only anger but despair and no answers. I don't know if there is a way to change, but I feel like they think that they're entertaining everybody through all this. And they feel like pawns through this whole thing. They feel like they're dancing to entertain everybody when they could be at home making their families feel better, where they could be at home protesting, as Jaylen Brown said. He wished he was protesting, he said yesterday. So I don't know that there is an answer, but I know there is a protest right now, and they know that their voices are strong. They told us they're going to use their voices. They told us they're going to use their platform, and they're doing it now by shutting down this game. And it's not just on our sports network, it's on all the news networks. It's being talked about globally. So yeah, no, this is something that we'll never forget.
And I want to stress again, I have a producer in my ear saying, no, they're not canceled, they're postponed. They're only postponed if these players agree to play them again. And that is still very much up in the air. Jay, you wanted to comment. What were you trying to say when Mark came into our discussion?
The backlash, Rachel, I'm going to be real with you. The backlash within the black community, if players play tomorrow, will be insane.
Really?
It will be insane. I do not think you will see basketball tomorrow as well. I think it might be a couple of days before we actually get actionable items from the players about what they want. But I think we have to prepare for a couple of days here, because if the Milwaukee Bucks led this, and then Orlando followed suit, and then the later game tonight followed suit. If you have guys that come back and play tomorrow, and they go back to the regular routines as normal, then you lose the momentum.
Sure.
So there's a trickle-down effect from this. This is going to continue. And I also wanted to answer your last question. You said, why NBA basketball players? And I will say this. We can't label them as just NBA basketball players. And I know that's not what you meant, Rachel. I'm just taking it to a different level here. We're talking about fathers, we're talking about sons, we're talking about people who are immersed in their community. And we talk about the resources, I heard Perk say, of what owners have. Let's not be remiss to the resources that players have. So, yes, are they politicians? No, they're not politicians, but they have access to people that can help guide them on how to do this properly. And we have to expect, with the bandwidth and the reach that these athletes have, that they have to find some way to get consultation from somebody or an entity that has experience in doing things like this, or even labor negotiations, to make sure that they are as informed as possible. And there's one thing I know about LeBron James and CP3. They will do their due diligence to make sure that they don't put their foot in their mouth and that they are as informed as possible.
No, you're absolutely right. They are fathers, they are husbands, they are sons, they are leaders in their community. My only point with that was, wow, where are some of our political and community and spiritual leaders if it's up to these young men to lead the way? But they are leading so impressively. The fact that they have taken this on, you mentioned the backlash against players if they do decide to play, that is going to be a factor, because there really has to be a, okay, now what? What is going to bring them back to the court? I'm sure there's going to be a backlash in some other communities as well if they don't play, right? We are going to see people across America who don't feel the way they do, saying,